Good afternoon, everyone. I am the Reverend Charisma Jean Marie, and I serve as the Director for Racial Justice Ministries at Scarritt Bennett Center in Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome to another live stream conversation with our RJM program there at Scarritt. On July 17, 2020, this nation mourned the loss of an iconic civil rights hero. Representative John Lewis dedicated his life to justice, hoping for a beloved community. His work to ensuring that everyone has the same voting rights and opportunity is essential as we approach November. Scarritt Bennett Center's Racial Justice Ministries continues to send our condolences and prayers to their families and the many friends and community who mourns. We too feel the weight of his departure, especially this year being an election year. Yet, we are reminded that getting in good trouble is the way to live our lives. So it is my honor this afternoon to welcome the brothers of Phi Beta Sigma to our live stream today as they come to be co-conspirators engaging us on the Black male vote. If you haven't already, please like and follow our page and also share this live stream and host a watch party, because our goal this afternoon is to reach the masses as we begin to prepare for November. All of you are welcome to be co-conspirators with us by asking your question and adding your thoughts to this conversation. You can do that right there on our post in the comment sections. And beloved, difference of opinion are always welcome in this space. This is sacred space, and all perspectives and difference of opinion are welcome. But difference does not mean hate or disrespect. So any conversation, any comment or question that reflects hate or disrespect will be deleted immediately. Again, thank you for joining us, and I am so honored to welcome Ashford Hughes, who will be our moderator this afternoon. Welcome, Ashford, and I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Reverend Jean Marie. We are excited to be with you here today in this important and timely conversation. I am excited to be here with my brothers on this call this afternoon, the good men, the outstanding men of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, as we have a conversation, not unlike many conversations that we have every Saturday at the barbershop, every Friday at 6 o'clock once we leave work, discussing our role here in this country and our role voting. I quickly, before I begin to lay the backdrop for the conversation for today, want to give some history about our fraternal organization. First, I want to recognize our international president, Brother Michael Crystal. We thank him, Honorable Michael Crystal. We thank him for his service to our community and to this fraternity. We also want to thank the Honorable Valerie Hollingsworth Baker, the Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, their international president. Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity was founded at Howard University in Washington, D.C., January 9th, 1914, by three young African-American males. Our founders, the Honorable A. Langston Taylor, the Honorable Leonard F. Morse, and the Honorable Charles I. Brown, wanted to organize a Greek letter fraternity that would truly exemplify the ideals of brotherhood, scholarship, and service. Our founders deeply wished to create an organization that viewed itself as a part of the general community rather than a part from the general community. They believed that each potential member should be judged by his own merits rather than his family, Black background, or affluence, without regard to race, nationality, skin, texture of hair. They desired for the fraternity to exist as part of an even greater brotherhood, which will be devoted to the inclusive we rather than the exclusive we. A brotherhood of conscious men actively serving our communities. The Brotherhood of Phi Beta Sigma are the fraternity's most valuable resource and strength. We are the primary means by which the Phi Beta Sigma fraternity objectives will be achieved in order to accomplish the fraternity's objectives. It is essential that systems are instituted that effectively embody culture for service and service for humanity and promote brotherhood, scholarship, and service. Our community initiatives, partnerships, and programs include our social action program, Bigger and Better Business, Education, and the Sigma Beta Club, all of which embrace these objectives to support Sigma's vision of ensuring programs that are focused and committed to serving our communities and serving young males through mentoring and scholarship, to ensure symmetry among all organizational and community initiatives, and to develop a sense of pride and commitment in the community towards healthy living that will reduce the incidences of health conditions that adversely affect men of color. That mission exemplifies our dearly departed brother, and I will say brothers, as earlier this year we also lost brother Elijah Cummings. But for this conversation, the loss of a great man, brother John Lewis, exemplifies the work that we have started in our communities, but the work that must continue on. This conversation today is about the work that must continue on following Congressman Lewis's loss. Getting into good trouble. Congressman Lewis, at his early age, participated in what was the tipping point for civil rights legislation, voting rights legislation. The march from Selma to Montgomery, where across that Edmund Pettus Bridge, he was almost beaten into inches of his death. That was the tipping point to change because of the death of Jimmy Lee Jackson in Perry County, Alabama, that led to that march. We see now in our history now, the tipping point for this social change has been around the murder of George Floyd, of Breonna Taylor. But now we come together as men to have this conversation about what's next. Where do we stand as far as voting in this country? Because we know that African-American men vote at lower rates than African-American women. We know that there are things that sometimes people say, our vote doesn't matter. So we come here today to have a conversation, an honest conversation, a barbershop conversation about where we are, where we need to be, and where does our hope lie in the future to get and continue to be in good trouble for the greater good of our community. I want to introduce and have our panel come in and introduce themselves, as we have an esteemed panel today. We have brothers from all over the country, from New Jersey to Virginia, to Arkansas, to even here, right in our home background in Nashville, Tennessee. So as I introduce our panelists and they come forward, we ask that they have about 2 to 3 minutes to introduce themselves, tell us about what they do, and tell us how this conversation now, with the loss of Congressman Lewis, is impassioning them to move forward. I'm going to first start and introduce our International Vice President, Brother Chris Ray.
Thank you so much, Brother Hughes, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much for spending the opportunity to learn a little bit about this subject matter. I am Brother Chris Ray, International First Vice President of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. Excited about this opportunity to be with my brothers from across the country to discuss Black men and our role in voting. Congressman John Lewis, who has played a critical life personally in my life as a former elected official, being the mayor of Spring Lake, North Carolina, but also an individual who's been in government, currently in the private sector, where I'm the president and CEO of the Capital Impact Group, which is a consulting firm that works with organizations to work strategically help them move their business from one level to the next while discussing, focusing on diversity in their organizations. But this conversation today, I'm hoping that when it is all said and done, that our viewers will take away, will get a little bit insight into the thought processes of not only the challenges that we as African-American men have felt or dealt with in this in the voting process, but also the opportunities that lie ahead for all of us being co-conspirators together and moving forward, making sure that we create a more just and equal system that all humanity, all human beings have an opportunity to flourish and to thrive in. So looking forward to the discussion with my brothers. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you, Brother Ray, for that. I now want to go to Brother Janabu Williams. Brother Williams, let's introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Brother Hughes. Again, my name is Brother Janabu Williams. I hail from the great state of New Jersey, representing the eastern region of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. I came into this organization back in 1994, and I have been a proud financial contributing member of this fraternity for 26 consecutive years. I came into the fraternity through Kappa Epsilon chapter, the mother chapter of Northern New Jersey, and I've been working for the fraternity ever since. I consider myself to be a proud, humble servant. I absolutely love just serving humanity, and I'm just been blessed to be able to serve my community through Sigma. As a man of faith, I believe that too much is given, much is required. I'm currently the Eastern Regional Director of our educational initiative for the fraternity, but I'm also very proud to be the International Director of our Male Mentoring Program, which is affectionately coined the Sigma Beta Club Program. Currently, right now, we're serving just over 4,200 boys and young men of color throughout our country. And so, just to be a part of the group of conscious men who have taken our rightful place in the community to not just move our fraternity forward, but to move our community forward is just an honor and a privilege. And so for me, man, I try to find my hands busy all the time and making sure that I'm a part of the solution rather being a part of the problem. During the day, I'm a high school administrator here in the city of Newark, New Jersey. And so this is my life's mission, to educate, to motivate, and to inspire youth to manifest their destiny through understanding the importance of education. So thank you for having me, man. I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation that I'm sure will support. I'm a co-conspirator. That's right. I'm excited to be a co-conspirator today and help move the needle with the Scarritt Business Center. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Now I'm going to go to my chapter president, Phi Beta Sigma chapter president, Dr. Emmanuel Rowe.
Good afternoon, everybody. Usually I'm full of energy, but it's kind of hard coming after Brother Janabu Williams. So I'll try to match. I'll try to match his level of energy. But again, Brother Dr. Emmanuel Rowe, I serve as the president of Phi Beta Sigma chapter here in Nashville, Tennessee, Music City, USA. I also serve as the regional director of education. And my passion is mentorship. So I want to make sure that as we have this conversation today about voting, that the people that are listening and the people that are within the earshot of this conversation are able to go out and do something and enact some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. So I hail from Miami, Florida. I was initiated into the Chi chapter of Morehouse College, where I crossed fall of 1999. And after that, I spent some time in North Carolina, in Virginia, where I met some great brothers in Iota Sigma that taught me the business of Sigma, where I am now in Phi Beta Sigma. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I really think it's one that needs to be had, because as men, we need to start leading some of these conversations and take them from the barbershop into your kitchen, into your houses, into everywhere. So we want to make sure that as we're discussing these topics, that we make it palatable for you all to understand and take it and act on it. So it's not just a conversation that we're having for the purpose of having a conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dr. Rowe. Now I'm going to come to Brother Benjamin Jackson down in Arkansas.
Man, y'all made it tough for me to speak, man. Y'all made it tough. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brother Benjamin Jackson. Currently, I live in Arkansas at the moment. I actually am the Social Action Director for the state of Arkansas. Current graduate of Flanagan Smith College in Little Rock, Arkansas. Initiate of the Phi chapter, Mother chapter of Arkansas, fall 2017. My passion has always been about government, genuine leadership, and politics. And I've always wanted to find a way to be involved and do my best to increase the voter turnout so that we have representation on all levels, from lawyers to doctors, to politicians, businessmen, etc. Because the biggest thing that I preach on is representation. If you have men and women in positions of influence that represent your background, your needs, and they understand your unique struggle, then opportunity and accessibility will be presented to you, but you have to play your part. And we're gonna go more into that later in the program, but I look forward to talk a lot about what we got going on with the Scarritt Bennett Center.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Brother Jackson. Now I'm going to come, and I will say last but not least, to a man who I really admire and have come to know over the years here in Nashville, Tennessee. And when he speaks, I listen. Now, he may say it's because he's been around a lot, but there's a lot of folks that's been around that speak, and you dang sure don't need to listen to what they're saying. But someone who I really admire, who's done a lot of work in this community, Pastor Sonny Dixon. Pastor Dixon. Did he freeze up on us?
It looks like it, Brother Hughes.
Okay. Well, we'll work to get Pastor Dixon back on, and while we're waiting to get him back on, I'm gonna go ahead and give the full introduction of myself. So again, my name is Ashford Hughes. I serve here, and I'm with the my chapter is Phi Beta Sigma here out of Nashville, Tennessee. I serve as our social action co-chair. Professionally, I work in Metro Nashville Public Schools as our executive officer for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Prior to that, I served within the mayor's office for 4 years as our chief diversity, equity, and inclusion officer, working on issues that put some of the conversation that we're going to have today in perspective. How do we create opportunities for marginalized, historically marginalized communities? I also serve in Nashville as our co-chair to our My Brother's Keeper network. That originally is where I first met Brother Williams in Los Angeles, working on that initiative focused on young males and how do we make certain that young Black and brown boys, we alleviate those opportunity gaps. If anybody knows me knows I am sold out to my purpose. I am sold out to engagement, to equity, and making certain that race, gender, zip code does not play a factor into the opportunities that one receives or the quality of life that one has. That's how I show up today, because it is vitally important that not only do we vote, but we also stay civically engaged year around. One vote is one vote, and it's important that we vote, but we have to show up at the school board meetings. We have to show up at the Metro Council meetings. We have to show up at the state meetings to let them know that we're here, but also to educate and engage our communities in knowing what is going on as well. So today we are going to have a really robust conversation about just those things. And I am glad to have everyone on here that's passionate about this as me. As we go into our first question, I'm gonna read something and it's gonna carry us into this first question. This is the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its power in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Woo! So as I come from that, I want to ask this first question. As Black men, and I'm gonna start with Brother Ray on this one. Brother Ray, and we can all answer, and I ask that you give two minutes so we can all go around the horn. Does our humanity as Black men allow the same access via voting in a system that we know has never considered us fully to be human, fully citizens within this country? Brother Ray.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that question. And I would say that as we look at the current system in which we're in, absolutely not. I believe that our humanity has not allowed for us to be a part of a system that that allows for us to take full advantage of the voting systems that we have as a nation. You have to first remember that this is a situation where we have a nation that didn't recognize someone who looks like me as a full human being. And it took us many hundreds of years to finally get that level of recognition. And so as we begin to look at how we move forward as a nation, it's very critical that we understand first and foremost that we have to educate people that we were not seen as human beings. And even today, as educated as I am, as educated as my brothers who are on this call are, they too have not been seen as individuals they have not been seen as, we feel that we have not been recognized as human beings. And so this system doesn't allow for us to feel that way. And so I just would ask, as we continue to dig deep into this conversation, that before we can move forward and fully feel that we're equal, we have to first recognize that the people that are around us don't see us as human. And that's where some of our challenges are. And I'll move that on and pass it on to my next brother to continue to answer that question.
Chris, we got a little bit of feedback there from you, but I'm gonna go to Brother Williams to answer that question as well.
So definitely, man. I thank you for the question, brother Hughes. I mean, it's just so disheartening. I mean, when you talk about us having certain invaluable rights as human beings, I mean, clearly that hasn't been the case for us as African American people, but also specifically as just Black men. When you think about the institutional racism, you think about the school to prison pipeline, and just these different traps that have been set for us to not to be able to be successful or to walk in our God-given gifts. And when you have a president who can sit at the highest office and sit and constantly promote hate and division, and so much so where you have so many radical left groups that we've always had these extremist groups, but they've now feel emboldened and empowered to spew that same hate, and you can see it manifesting right before our very eyes, right on TV. Black men have always had difficult relationships when it comes to law enforcement. When you think back to about Rodney King and different situations like that. But when you can look up now and we can just see young man after young man, or just being lynched, right on our TVs. It just really shows the disparity that lies within our community, and really for me accentuates the fact that why we have to get out and vote. It's just not, I look at it as like we don't have a right to not vote. My vote, when people say, oh, it's one vote, but I don't look at it as it's just one vote. I'm voting for the hundreds and thousands of Black men and Black women who unfortunately didn't even have this opportunity to cast one vote or whatever. So when we do it, it's just more symbolic of that. And to be here on the heels of one of the biggest civil rights icon our brother, the humanitarian John Lewis, to continue that, getting into that good trouble. I mean, Brother Lewis said that our right to vote is the most powerful nonviolent tool that we have as citizens. And I take great pride in educating every young man that comes to our mentoring program, every young adult that comes in, that I come in contact with, to understand that it's not just a right, but it's your obligation as a young African American man and woman to vote. So that's my thoughts on that, Brother Hughes.
So I think that's a really good point that you make about voting being an obligation, because oftentimes people look at voting as just a choice that they have, as something that comes once around a period of time and then they're forced to go do something. It truly is how you control your destiny.
That's right.
Most of these people that you're seeing at the federal and at the national level are there because they started first at the local level. So when you all go and vote, you have to go and vote first at the local level and know what some of these people are running for. And you can guide what they're running on by making your voice be heard for some of the things that are important to you in your neighborhood, in your school system, in your local area. So that's where some of these people come from. And you need to take great pride in going and voting and make it more of a great opportunity where you and your kids go. Like me, my wife and I, we always use voting as an opportunity to show our kids, hey, we're all going voting as a family. So that way it's ingrained in them. So when they get older, they will then do that with their kids. And that's what we need to do as head of households, to make sure that we're engaging our children and these next generations to know why they're doing it, as opposed to just doing it as a matter of task.
Brother Jackson.
Man, I mean, they said it really well. I mean, it is our obligation to get out and vote. I believe that our vote is our piece of access to America. Now, don't get me wrong, one vote out of millions and billions is a very small percentage, right? But see, the beautiful part is when you have a multitude of people going out to vote and understanding that voting is an obligation. It is basically, like Brother Rose said, it is the tool to your destiny, right? When you realize that one small piece of information, everything changes, right? The people that we elect, the accessibility that we have for Black men and women in America changes completely, right? So that's why it's so big on the young vote to get out and vote. Start at 18 as soon as they can go out and vote. Because what happens is, and again, no, we do not have the same accessibility as anybody else in America. We don't have that accessibility, but we can change that, right? Let's find a solution. The more and more we get people to go out and vote, what happens is elections change completely. From a local, state, and federal perspective, it completely changes. But see, here's the thing about the young vote. We have to play our part. We got great leaders in front of us right now speaking to us that are taking the forefront, that are trying to speak to the younger vote and tell us, hey, this is how we need to do it. This is how y'all need to go about it. But we have to rise up and take responsibility, because these leaders will not be here forever. So it's our job is to prepare and get into these positions of influence so we can create more accessibility for the next generation of leaders that come after us, just as y'all did for us. And that's why it's so vital to go out and vote. It doesn't matter if we get 1 vote, 2 votes, whatever the case may be. We utilize our piece of America. And when we get that piece of America and a multitude of people go out and vote, you're going to see elections change. You're going to have more representation, more accessibility, and things completely change for the African American communities.
So we talk about this often, right? And when we're out and we're conversing amongst each other, we always hear that my vote doesn't matter. They're going to do what they want to do anyway, right? And we talk about the importance of voting. Oftentimes we say, well, look, we have our forebears that came and laid the foundation for us. But just in this past 2018 cycle of voting, Black women voted at a clip nationally of 55%, Black men around 45 to 46%. Historically, that has been kind of the norm over the last 20, 25 years. I want to get down to the heart of what does that mean? Is it do we see these issues right now with the lack of strong Black male voting participation and the fact that we don't see candidates that either look like us running for political positions, or we don't see candidates that are laying out a vision for the issues that affect us moving forward? Brother Rowe, I'm gonna start with you on that question.
I think is we don't see candidates that have similar interests that we do. So oftentimes when you're going out and you're going to vote, there's not a lot of research that goes into it. Whenever voting season comes around, you get bombarded by political ads that are so divisive in nature that sometimes it kind of turns you off to the entire process. You have one group saying, before anything else, this other person is the worst person for the job, and they spend more time telling you why that other person is the worst person than they do telling you why they would be a better person for the job. So a lot of times the political landscape sometimes can turn you off to actually participating in it. But you have to go out and do your own research and not just eat what's given to you, so to speak. So you have to be able to go and do some research to see what these people are actually standing for and what they're actually running and what they've actually done. There's a couple of websites like Ballotopedia that lays out every candidate and what they believe in, where they're from, and look at Equity Alliance. They have a voter's guide that's nonpartisan. There's a lot of places. Just make sure that the information that you're getting is nonpartisan, so it's not jaded one way or another, because these political ads, these political campaigns can really be exhausting. But you have to look beyond that and see what that person can do for you. And you personally have to go in and vote for that person, for what they can do for your community, for your cause, for your purpose, for what you believe in.
Brother Williams, I'm gonna go to you. Where is that disconnection between Black men voting and us seeing ourselves in the people that are running and what's being presented for us to support?
Well, I mean, we've been disenfranchised for so long. You know, again, just I think Brother Rowe hit a lot of great points. Specifically, when you talk about some men, you know, I'm going to be honest, I don't even think, you know, when you think about things like the 3-strike rules and not even knowing if they're eligible to vote, or, you know, because of, you know, maybe something that may have happened to them in their life through law enforcement, or some type of being convicted of a crime. Brother Rowe talked about something. He said that he makes this a family thing to go out and with his children and his wife to go vote. And so I just thought that was just so powerful, because really what he's doing is that's going to now be ingrained into the culture of his family, that this is something we do. And that's not something traditionally we've done, and, you know, as African Americans, as a community. I born and raised in a 2-family household. My mother and father, they voted. I know that they vote. They went and they used to vote, but it wasn't something like it was a family thing. You know, we have to now make this almost like, you know, you turn to 18, you know, having a driver's license is almost like a rites of passage to manhood. We got to make, you know, you having a voter registration card a rites of passage to manhood, and not just voting, to Brother Rose said, in the presidential election, but what's happening on your city council, what's happening on your local school boards, what's happening on those local levels, because it does trickle, you know, roll up into the state, federal, and, you know, the federal level as well. And so I just think that, you know, and that's one of the things I'm just so proud, you know, that our fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma fraternity, is just so committed to rewriting that narrative, you know, as it relates to Black men and our responsibility as if, you know, in voting. I mean, we have a major initiative. We've partnered with the NAACP and other national organizations to not just to talk about voter registration, but voter education, and then voter mobilization as well. So we want to make sure that we're educating, you know, all of the men within our fraternity, within our sphere of influence. We want to make sure that we're mobilizing them. And sometimes people think that election day is November the 3rd. we are in election season. You know, people think that you can go on that one day, but no. I cast my vote last, my wife and I cast our vote on last week. And this is getting out to vote early and to vote often. I mean, not vote early, but getting out there and making sure we do our part as a community, but more importantly, as African-American men. And I'm just really proud to be able to have a voice in this season to influence all of the men that I come in contact with, whether it's through my local church, whether it's through my barbershop, whether it's through professional organizations. We all have to do our part to make sure that we educate, all the brothers within our sphere of influence.
So, Janab, you make a really good point about education.
Yes.
Oftentimes, people just make a big point of voter registration, right? Voter registration is great, but we have to take the additional step of actually getting people to go and vote. So just because you're registered to vote, you have additional responsibilities, right? You have to actually go in and vote. It's your responsibility to get all the information about the people that are running, because your ballot looks different from your neighbors up the street.
That's right.
Because they're in a different district, they're in a different polling precinct. So you have to be able to know who's going to be on your ballot and do that information, and not just rely on people just telling you or commercials showing you who's the worst. Start trying to see who's the best and who is in your area. And don't be afraid to have a conversation with these people. Like it's election season, especially at the local level. They will entertain all your conversations. Right. And you need to be able to go talk to them, tell them what your concerns are and what you don't like about what's going on, and find out how they could change it. And they're not willing to change it or be proactive in it, then that's your cue to find somebody else to run. And it could be the case that you might be the right person to run, and you might need to educate yourself and prepare yourself to run for office.
Man, I want to first remind those that are watching today, if you have questions, please put your questions in the chat box, so we want to be able to get to those. I want to be able to jump in, and I'm glad that Reverend Dixon was able to get back on. So I'm going to issue this question to Reverend Dixon and Brother Jackson. You know, when we talk about Black men not voting at a high clip and us being more involved, how shall we connect our everyday lived experiences as Black men with the importance of civic engagement and with the power of our vote? How do we make these things connect with each other to express upon ourselves like this is something we must do? I'll start with you, Reverend Dixon. You take yourself off mute.
Yes, sorry about that. I am technically challenged. I was listening to part of the conversation. I do want to bring out something that Brother Rowe said earlier about taking his family. The importance of voting and participating becomes what we as role models serve for our children and for those who are around us. That our participation comes as much about the action that we take as much as it's about the people of whom we vote for. I must admit, there have been times when since my kids were old enough to know what I was doing, I used to carry my kids with me to vote. Sometimes I didn't vote for anybody. I wrote in a name because I didn't feel confident about the candidates we were doing. But I was saying to them, this is something you're doing. Just as I dealt with the treatment of my wife, treatment of my community, and the responsibilities with that becomes a kind of responsibility that we have. They need to see me just as important as they see me doing other things, because we tend to model that for them. And I think that has a lot to do with how my son followed in my footsteps, not only in being a member of Phi Beta Sigma, but also in the other kind of social activities that we have. And so I think that becomes the important part of saying that we have to participate. And then if we're going to participate, then it becomes important upon us to at least measure and become aware of what it is that we're going and voting for. As I say oftentimes, sometimes we have to vote for the lesser of two evils. but it's still important for us to say, at least I have discernment who's less evil than the other person. So I think that's why it's important for us to participate in the process.
Brother Jackson.
And again, like what Dr. Rose said, man, it starts at home. Like it really does. It starts at home. You know, I have my nieces and nephews. I'm big on my nieces and nephews. I love them to death. And it is my job as their uncle is to instill information at a young age and have them continuously learning about everything from business to education to voting, everything. So I send information to my nephews and my nieces periodically. And so they ask questions, right? But see, the good part is that information, it stimulates the mind and they should start asking questions. Like, okay, why did you send me this information? So I can start explaining myself better, right? And that's how they start learning, because at a young age, when you start instilling that information, those ideals, etc., what happens is they're more likely to go out and vote because, like, oh, my uncle did this, my uncle did that. And you being their role model, they're going to try to embody what you do. And that's the thing that we have to do as leaders, is to set the tone and set the stage for them, because we are creatures of habit. If we see people that we love and care for doing certain things, we're going to emulate it. I mean, and that's what happens, right? And that's the good part when you have good leaders that set the pavement for you. All you really have to do is kind of just add on to what they already created and kind of take it up to the next level, right? But I think one of the important things that we have to always keep in mind is that we're trying to make sure that we're guiding people and making it cool, right? The key term for the younger people, like, it's okay to vote. Like, it's not a bad thing. It's not evil. Because you hear a lot of people saying, like, it's bad to vote. Like, oh, it's bad. It's not bad to vote. It's cool to vote. And you kind of instill that mentality. And what happens is it's like a domino effect. If you go out and vote and you get your friend to go out and vote, they're going to tell someone else to go out and vote, and they go vote. And it's a trickle effect. And we increase that voter turnout in urban communities. And that is our responsibility to do. And we can be at the barbershops, we can be at the neighborhood salons, the basketball courts, whatever the case may be, these circles that we're in. We need to always have conversations about the political process. We cannot afford not to have conversation. The more that we have conversations about the political process in all our circles, the more likely that your friends, your loved ones, your associates, your connections are more likely to go out and vote. But most of all, understand that we get people to register to vote. We educate people on why do you vote and the people that they're going to potentially vote for. But then the most important part about the voting process is getting people to vote, the mobilization part. And how do I play an important role in getting my friends, my family, and my associates to the polls so we can increase the voter turnout in urban?
Ashford, I just want to follow just briefly of saying, I appreciate when Brother Jackson talked about his nieces and nephews.
That's right.
Young people will ask us our question, why are we doing something? They will not accept, just do it because I said, I told you to do it. They will ask you pointed questions. Why are you doing it? Why are you drinking that whiskey and you tell me not to drink that whiskey? So I think that becomes important for us to say that once we say to do this, then we have to explain to them. And that's how we end up teaching our young people and teaching our friends and our peers.
So
you touched on a really good point, Brother Dixon.
Is commission report, and if anybody's familiar with that, and President Lyndon Johnson issued this commission to look at a study on some of the social disorder that was taking place around Detroit areas, and the commission came back and really said, due to racism, due to the lack of housing, due to the lack of economics in Black communities, you were seeing this social unrest in our communities. Oftentimes we hear today that, oh man, what is the Black agenda? What do we want as a community, as a people? Often we already talk about those, again, every social setting that we're in. but there is a disconnect. But I'm gonna start with Brother Williams. What are our issues that we are trying to address that can be spoken of as our Black agenda? What does that look like for us as Black men? And how do we continue to communicate that as an agenda that our top elected officials hear it, understand it, and cater to it?
So for me, when I opened up, I talked about, the issues as it relates to African American men and with specifically with police brutality. So for me, what's on this docket this year is transparency. We want transparency with our police officers. We want law enforcement to wear, a body worn cameras. We want to revoke general qualified immunity with police officers. Establish a national hiring standard for police misconduct. I mean, when I sit back and I think about, the various cases of police misconduct, when I think about Tamir Rice, the gentleman that killed Tamir Rice name was Timothy Loman. Timothy Loman was hired, and he went through a police academy. When he went through this police academy, he was hired, and 5 months after he got his job, he was fired. He was released, and the police department that fired him, they didn't state specifically what it was he did, but in a nutshell, it was basically saying this man is not fit to be to be a cop. Like he's a danger. He's going to be a law enforcement officer. This man was fired in 2 years. He sought for 2 years. He was trying to find a job. It was for 2 years. He could not find any employment. And it wasn't until 2 years later he got hired by the Cleveland Police Department. Right? I think it was around March 2014. And when he got hired in March 2014, somewhere around November, the latter part of November, Tamir Rice was killed. But if we had something to the effect as far as some type of national standards as it relates to a database where we know where police misconduct was captured, then maybe Tamir Rice would be, instead of being a footnote in a conversation here, he would be in his finishing up his bachelor's degree and his master's degree and manifesting that destiny that his parents sought him to be. So for me, it's just so much more than what we may see. Is deeper than that. And again, I know a lot of the issues in which I'm raising, we talked about, start at the local level. And so when we talk about, President Trump's him being the president, right now I live in a town called East Orange, New Jersey. So there's some things in which I can do right here in my local town to invoke change, but it all starts with my right and understanding the power, as Congressman Lewis would say, that power that's in that vote, man. So I'm just so committed. And I feel that, we talk about that responsibility. Brother Rose talked about his responsibility as a family man. I look at it as a responsibility as a Sigma man. I put this jacket on with pride today, knowing I was going to be a part of this conversation. When I think about those giants who came before me, Hosea Williams, not just John Lewis, Hosea Williams, A. Phillips, Randolph. So for me, it's my responsibility as a Sigma man to get into some good trouble and to make sure that we carry on a legacy of those good brothers.
Dr. Rowe, fill in from that. Powerful, Brother Williams. Dr. Rowe, fill in.
The other part that we have to advocate for is economy. So removing policies that block us out of good jobs and investing in health and wealth in our communities. A lot of our communities are food deserts and education deserts. Some areas don't have high performing elementary and middle schools for our kids to go to, right? So at the local level, we need to go to some of these school board meetings and hold these elected school board officials accountable for how these schools are performing. We need to be able to do right by our kids and maybe take them to different schools in different areas to give them the education that they need. Because if our kids aren't learning, if their minds aren't exploring, then they're closing off that wealth gap, right? And we need to make sure that we have, grocery stores that have fresh foods in our communities. It may seem trivial, it may seem like it's just a Black agenda, but that's more of a humanistic agenda. So some might say, why would a white voter care about the Black agenda? It's more of a humanistic agenda, right? If people are not eating properly and they're not in good health, they don't have access to health care, that's not a Black issue. That's a humanity issue.
That's right.
If people don't have access to quality education, that's not a Black issue. That's a humanity issue. So we want to make sure that these areas that are around the city, like areas in Miami, areas in Nashville, areas in South LA that don't have access to some of these resources, we need to help and provide them with their resources, because as a humanity, if we all do better, we all will be better. So we can't just leave the people that are behind and say, oh, sorry, I'm just going to keep moving. No, you have to throw the rope, go back and help people that are in need.
So I want to come to Reverend Dixon on this one. As you talk about, Dr. Rowe, looking at it on the level of humanity, well, we know that is accurate. That is what Congressman Lewis took to the United Nations. That is what Dr. King talked with them about, our humanity. But we know that hasn't worked that well for us thus far. We know as we kind of frame the founders as these folks that tried to issue the idea of democracy, Congressman Lewis, C.T. Vivian, more than ever, more than our founders, actually tried to live up to those principles. But how do we still, when we talk about humanity, we still are not seeing some of our white counterparts living up to that essence of humanity? So in turn, we have to have issues that we focus on moving forward. How do we reconcile those, Pastor Dixon? And I ask you that as a person that is within the ministry, that is leading ministry, but also as a person that has worked to help the integration of schools and that process. How do we reconcile our humanity with our co-conspirators on a white community not living up to that human nature that we desire?
I believe the first thing, and I believe the agenda that we ought to be pushing is, first of all, to get certain people to start repenting of the sins that they have committed, and to acknowledge, if there's anything I'm pushing for, is that we've got to stop punishing Black men in particular because of the success of one Black man. I mean, a lot of what's going on now is they just mad that they for years and years they've saying, well, we cannot put Black men in certain positions. A Black man rose to the highest place. When I was growing up, they always say, if you do this, you one day could be president of the United States. That was a way of continuing trying to inspire. Well, finally, one got to be president of the United States. He got in the United States. He got to be the president. He didn't cheat on his wife. He didn't get to jail. He didn't do any of those things of which they've done. And now they are still mad. So when the question says, why should white folks concerned about a white agenda? It is our frustration and our anger over the treatment, because there was at least one of whom played by their rules and succeeded at their rules. So what has to happen, and we as Black men in encouraging that, is that we have to continue to say that, look, we demand respect. That's what, Lewis and the group were talking about, is that we don't want anything any different. We just don't want to be denied certain things because of who we are. And that's got to be the agenda. When Brother Rowe talks about food deserts and stuff, don't continue to say, when you own the grocery stores, when you're the one that are part of you make the decision, you say, well, if you want it, you can drive across town to be able to get it. The only thing they make convenient for us is chicken place and places where we can get soda pops. That's their decision based upon out of their own sense of saying, well, we're going to be sympathetic to your needs rather than recognizing that they wouldn't do that to any other group of people other than us. And a part of it today still stems from the fact they still mad that they made a mistake and allow one to get in the White House that did not act like they thought he should act.
Wow. Powerful.
Wow.
I'm going to bring back on Reverend Jean Marie, who has a couple of questions from the Facebook audience. Reverend Jean Marie.
Awesome. You all are getting some good trouble this afternoon. Good trouble this afternoon. I want to continue to engage you all around this idea of the impact of one vote. And Ashford, I'm going to start with you. Let's talk about when you go to the polls, why should one consider the impact of one's vote to communities, particularly the ones, as we would say in the Christian community, the least of these, right? But the one who have much privilege, right? You go and cast your vote. Why should one be thinking about the impact of the vote? Not just race, but gender. Not just gender, but sexual orientation. Not just sexual orientation, but immigration, education, the criminal justice system. There are so many ways in which our vote impacts the least of these. And so for the one who votes all the time, right? Why should one be considering the least of these and ways in which it impacts those communities? Ashford, let's start with you.
I believe for me, it starts with the moral obligation, right? As I hold myself up to be within the faith community, it's a moral obligation. As I talked about earlier, selling myself, that I am sold out to my purpose. I recognize that, just like James Baldwin said, we are either going to live together on this planet together, or we're going to perish together, right? And right now is a time that we have to move beyond the skin tone of each other, right? Because race is a social construct within itself, right? Before 1619, there was no black, white, right? So I view my vote and my impact as something greater, something bigger than not only myself, my community, something bigger than the Constitution. I view this as a humanistic, as Dr. Rose said, exercise that I need to partake in to better the government that I live in, to better this idea of a democracy. For me, the one reason that I really even got involved in politics, or even got involved in community organizing, was because at age 19 at Tennessee State, my best friend was killed by gun violence in Knoxville. Several months later, another friend was killed. Same issue. That same year, 2 years, while I'm in college, I have multiple friends coming in and out of jail, right? Based off of the environment that we grew up in the inner city. For me, I do this work now, and my vote is tied into my purpose, which is I do not want to see young black men that look like me, young black women that look like me, living and dying in the same impoverished circumstances that I grew up in. My vote is a testament to say, these are the issues that I care about, and I'm going to vote, and I'm going to hold you accountable post me voting. That is my impact. And I know, yes, we want to look beyond just race, just beyond class, just beyond our own selves. And that is how I manifest the opportunity and the importance of my votes on a year-in, day-to-day basis. I vote for dog catcher. I vote for anything that has, it's time to vote, I'm there, right? And it's all because of my innate testimony that not only do I serve the least of these, I serve the entire human community in which I live.
Brother Williams, you talked about, I didn't realize you from East Orange, New Jersey. I'm actually sitting in New Jersey right now. That is where I'm from. And so, hey, Jersey.
Jersey.
But Brother Williams, let's talk about it, right? Why should the one who lives in California be concerned about what's happening in East Orange, New Jersey. When we talk about voting, and I appreciate you all mentioned earlier today, it's not just registering to vote, it's not just going to vote, but it's also educating ourselves about what's on the ballot, but not just what's on the ballot, but the ways in which our casting our vote impacts, right, our own humanity and the humanity of others. So let's talk about the impact of one's vote, Brother Williams. Why should one consider other communities, not just their own communities, but other communities as it relates to how they cast a vote?
So one of the things in which I when I start this type of conversation with the youth that I have a direct impact on, I always start the conversation with, why do you think they would go to such great lengths, or someone would go to such great length to suppress your vote? Yeah. Why do you think someone would go to such great lengths to deny you the right to vote? To when you talk about why was the voters' right of 1965 so powerful? And it wasn't just because it's not just about that vote. It's about when those registered voters are now used, that same pool is used to select jurors. And so when you talk about being tried by a jury of your peers, we can't have a jury of our peers if we're not registered to vote. And so really understanding and making sure that young adults know that it's not just about the power, you going to pull a lever or whatever it may be within your town. And, for me, these are not just Black issues. Dr. Rowe talked about, these are human rights issues.
That's right. When
George Floyd, when Officer Chauvin put his knee on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, there was so much social unrest around the country because the world saw. Ray Charles can see that this is not right. So that's not just this is a Black issue. Like, no, no one should be. We saw a public lynching. For those of us, again, and we're not just that far away from slavery and lynching. Some of us are just 1 or 2 generations away from that. So to physically see it, for me, it just broke my heart to have a conversation with my 11-year-old son as to why something like this could take place. So for me, it's definitely personal. Again, I told you in the beginning, I'm a man of faith, so I believe too much is given, much is required. It's my duty. I have a responsibility to my community. I have a responsibility to every young man, young women that I come in contact with to make sure that they are empowered with information. They're empowered with education. So as it relates to the vote, for me, it's not just about that one-time vote. It's about what you being a registered voter means. It's about you being an active citizen within your community. How do you invoke change? You invoke change. You got to know when that city council is meeting. You got to know when those committee meetings take place. You got to know it don't just show up, on that one day when the mayor is there and he may be presiding over a city council meeting. Each of those city council meetings, someone oversees education, someone oversees public works, someone oversees taxation. And so it's making sure that your voice is heard locally. And I think once we do that, we will create that next generation of leaders who will go forth and I think really, we may not see it. Prayerfully, we will see it in this generation, but I just know that the work that we're doing collectively as a fraternity, we're sowing seeds of greatness. And so I heard a quote one time that says, "A society grows when men and women plant trees for which shade they will not even sit under." So I'm planting seeds for trees, right? For shade. And I might not sit under those trees, but prayerfully, my son and my nephews and those who come after will sit and reap the benefits of the work that we're doing today as a community and as a fraternity of a brotherhood of conscious men.
Awesome.
Reverend Chair
Reverend
Cena.
Dixon, I wanna take this next question to you,
Okay.
Reverend Dixon. It's coming from the audience, a question from the audience, and let me remind our viewers, you are invited to join in the conversation by placing your comments and thoughts in the comment sections of our live stream today. This question, Reverend Dixon, I'm directed to you, and it reads from the audience: in regards to education, will you all address the current presidential candidates and their platforms, more specifically, how one platform may affect our community? And I want to remind the audience, this is a nonpartisan conversation. We're not here to tell you how to vote, but we do want to lift up the issues that are affected by this election season. And so, Reverend Dixon, from the issues perspective, specifically education, let's talk about what these presidential candidates are speaking of as it relates to education.
Well, I think that's a good example of what happens and how we get distracted from the real issue. Children will be able to learn if they find themselves in healthy environments. How can you expect a child to learn when they're dealing with the anxiety around COVID? How can you expect a child to live when they don't have adequate places for them to be able to live, their neighborhoods, when they're up all night having to deal with the violence in it? So when I look at the agenda, I look at what are they doing for the quality of life? All of these people who saying they are pro-life, are they really pro-life in the conditions that allow children to be able to flourish in themselves? If we're not giving them the basic foundation, if we're not giving them adequate food, Brother Rowe talked about food. So we say, well, let's talk about the educational plan. No, let's first of all talk about how do we get a child to the building so that the child is in the right frame of mind to be able, and then we can be able to deal with it. I mean, ABCs is still ABCs.
That's right.
Still teaching and training so that we are able, we go to jobs, no education teaches us what we need to do. They'll teach us when we get to the job. What they want to know, are we able to learn? Are we able to follow instruction? And most of our children get in trouble, and our education system is failing because our kids are not healthy. The number one issue we need to be talking about now is the mental health of our children, of all of us.
That's right.
If we don't deal with mental health and get us mentally healthy, then we cannot deal with the other issues. So when I look at a candidate, who is going to help me, and for our topic of conversation today, who has an agenda of where young Black boys can flourish and achieve of what is, I believe, internally within them, and not have to deal with the external factors that are going on.
Thank you for that. You're absolutely right. The issues are interconnected, right? A hungry child can't learn. And so if you're concerned about the educational system, you have to also be concerned about how children are eating, because a hungry child cannot learn. Absolutely. Thank you for that.
That's a very good point.
I want to invite your voice into this conversation, Brother Jackson. Come on and join us and talk to us a little bit about, the ways in which our audience members who are asking the question about these candidates and the education system, what are your thoughts about the educational system? Brother Dixon done laid it out, but I want to bring your voice in this, Brother Jackson.
It goes back, like Dr. Rose said, was, it's not a black and white thing, it's a human thing. We're all humans at the end of the day. That's just what it is. And I come from Northwest Indiana, where we're 1, 2 in poverty, violence, Section 8, food stamps, everything you could think of. We're 1 and 2. We're 1 and 2. We're everything. And the thing that you see a lot of people go through is not having the adequate health care or resources. They're going days without eating. It'd be so many factors that they're not having, right? And you see a lot of great men and women that you grow up with in these circumstances. And, you know, and I say this to a lot of people, I was one of the lucky ones, you know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I came from a 2-parent household. Don't get me wrong. Great parents, right? But these men and women were way smarter than I was. No questions asked. Quick on their toes, etc. But the circumstances, they didn't have certain things, and it just didn't play out in their favor. But if we were able to give them the adequate health care, give them an actual place to live in. Because I had a really good friend growing up in high school that I played on the basketball team with. And he literally had this one, it's not even a room. It was just a living room with like a bathroom. That's it. And it was like 12 of them living in this small room. And you would never think it was that small. You would never think he was going through these situations. But it affected his grades. It was affecting his way of thinking. And he admitted that to us. So it's like we need to find a way to provide these resources, the basic resources that they should already have. And how do they get these resources so they can go out and be productive in the community? And that is our responsibility. And we need to hold our elected officials accountable on all levels, on the local level, a state level, a federal level. They should be held responsible for some of these things that are not being provided to everyday people. This is not a color thing. This is a people thing. These are people. And when we start neglecting people's basic rights to live, to eat here, to even just walk down the street and not be in a safe environment, we need to look at that on a closer lens and really figure out how do we fix those issues. And that's what some of the things we need to make sure we're doing throughout our community and hold our officials accountable on all 3 levels.
All right. Thank you, Brother Jackson. One more question from the audience, and this is a very important question, and I'm going to start with you, Brother Roy, but I'd love for all of you to respond to this question. If this isn't related to voter suppression, and your brother, your fraternity brother, John Lewis' legacy is around the work of voter suppression. And so in the current, the audience question reads as such: in the current climate, there is concern for voter suppression. A mistake may be to plan to vote on November 3rd. Can you discuss a voting strategy for our underrepresented communities? So this is in regards to early voting. Starting with you, Brother Rowe, let's talk about why our communities really should be planning to vote early. Why our community should be planning to vote early and the benefits in voting early.
So the benefit of voting early is, in this COVID environment, is shorter lines and more options of places that you're able to vote. I'm not sure in other states, but in the state of Tennessee, when you early vote, you don't have to go to your voting precinct to vote. You can go at any site to go vote. So you can go during your lunch break, during early vote, and stop at the Bordeaux Library, for example, and just stop in and vote, cast your ballot, and go. So it's really important to early vote because you have more time and it's less pressure, and it's more safe to go in there real fast, put on your mask, go in at your leisure, no lines, go in and vote, and then you're good to go. But if you're waiting on election day, there's a myriad of people and things and stuff that can happen on that day that will lead to longer lines, that will lead to a less than ideal climate for you to vote. So find out when the early voting starts. For us, it's going to start pretty soon. Find any voting site, any voting precinct, go in and cast your vote.
Brother Hughes, let's talk about voter suppression, the possibilities in November 3rd, and why Black men should not wait for November 3rd to vote, but they really should consider early voting.
So we oftentimes talk about every election is the most important election, but this one here is an important election. In Tennessee, early voting starts this Wednesday, the 14th. Our Phi Beta Sigma chapter, we are having an event partnering with community partners this Saturday to have people come to the polls in a social distancing manner
Mhm.
to go and vote. You never know what could happen between now and November the 3rd. It could be, Nashville has been prone to having all these different weather challenges now.
That's right.
Get it done now.
That's
You see where we have the federal level tinkering with the post office. You have other stuff going on. We don't want to mess around right now. And the impact of our vote, we often limit voting to only being about participation. Voting is about power. Voting is about the power to affect the way the resources come to our community, who represents our community, and how all that is distributed within our communities.
That's right.
We have to become equipped with understanding this march to the polls for this election is about power.
That's
taking our collective power as Black citizens of this country to say, this is what we want and this is what we care about. And we need to do it now. We know that we saw, unfortunately, at one of our debates, stand back and stand by. Now, we don't know what that means, but we can be rest assured that we need to be vigilant that things may happen on election day. So we need to take care of our business now. Phi Beta Sigma is telling our folks to let's get out and vote early so that we can alleviate any type of negative things that may go on November the 3rd. But we have to become equipped within our Black community in understanding this is about power for our communities, and be okay with talking about the power and the impact of our vote to champion what we need in our communities.
That's right.
Also, I challenge you to be your brother's keeper and ask them.
John Lewis' legacy was about, voter suppression. So I want your voice. Come on and have a conversation about the power of early voting and why Black men, you talked earlier about making voting a family affair. So come on and bring your voice in around early voting.
I want to add just a slightly different twist. I think one of the big voter suppression thing is to say your vote does not matter. Ashford and Emmanuel are both in Nashville. I would venture to say none of us are going to vote for any winning candidates. Our votes, and this whole notion that your vote only counts if you vote for the winner. And so if it don't win, then you don't. For me, it's about a personal dignity. It's about people like John Lewis. It's about the people like Fannie Hamer who went and gave their lives so that I would have that opportunity. It's about my personal respect. And I think we've got to talk more about that and if we're going to listen to, in particular, as you were talking about co-conspirators, if we're going to get our co-conspirators, we have to at least say that we are concerned about the issue so that we can hold them accountable of saying they're voting along with the issues that we feel are important. But first of all, it's important that I vote, whether my candidate, my issue wins or not, but out of respect for who I am and for those who paved the way for me to be able to vote. I cannot give in to suppression simply because it's based upon who is victorious.
Thank you. Brother Williams, let's talk. Have you have a conversation about early voting?
Yes, early voting is necessary. I mean, if you don't think voter suppression is real, I just saw an article on yesterday that talked about a federal judge who blocked the Texas governor from limiting ballot drop box to one per county. Now, I live in New Jersey. Now, I know how big a county is in New Jersey, but I'm saying the state of Texas, a county in Texas could be as large as the state of New Jersey. I would like to imagine. So you want to just have just one there. So think about those senior citizens. Think about those who maybe can't people who don't have cars. Can't get around as easily as others. So they're definitely trying to make sure they suppress your vote. You had the federal postmaster who said, you know what, he wants to shut down sorting machines, all types of sorting machines and overtime for postal workers as we enter into the final stage of what's going to be the biggest election probably of our lifetimes. Why would they do that? So for me, voter suppression is real, is relevant. And so for me, it's about voting early. Getting out and making sure you voting early and having a plan having a plan as far as how I'm going to do it. I remember, I'm just being transparent. A couple years ago, I would just say, yeah, I'll get up and, one time, I remember when I first got early 20s, it was vote, I said, I'm going to vote on November the 3rd. I don't even remember what it was voting for, but I remember on that November 3rd, it rained like cats and dogs. And I said, I'm just not going to go, and so anything can happen to brother, Dr. Rose said, anything can happen on November the 3rd. So here in the state of New Jersey, I'm happy to report that we got all of our ballots were mailed to us. So I got mine on last week. I was able to fill it out in the comfort of my own home, and I made it as a project. I took my son and I took my nephew with me to go, and we cast our vote together. So we talk about that family thing. We talk about breaking those generational curses or cycles within our African American community about the importance of voting. And so for me, I'm just happy to be a part of this conversation and be able to do my part to invoke change and to really honor the legacy of all of those great African American men and women who literally died for the right for me to be able to do just what I explained to you. So when we do that, we also, show our power, our collective power, but we also honor those our ancestors. And I think for me, that's a responsibility as a Black man.
Awesome. Thank you so much. One more question before we move on. One more question, and I'm going to start with you, Brother Jackson. We talked a lot about candidates. But I'd like to switch the conversation to talk about amendments and issues and the local issues that will be on the ballot, right? So yesterday I'm with my sisters. I told y'all I'm in Jersey. I'm with family. I'm with my sisters, and my sister is doing the mail-in ballot there in Jersey. And she's looking at the ballot, and there's some questions. Right? And the questions are written in a way where none of us who are degreed up, right? We got multiple degrees in the room. No one understands the question, right? When we talk about voter suppression. So Brother Jackson, won't you talk to our audience today about the importance of educating yourselves about the ballot before going to vote? Come on and have that conversation with us this afternoon.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you for the question. Great question. It goes back to really what everything we were saying earlier is that we have to do things pretty early. Young age, educating our youth on these issues that do occur. And the prime example, like you said, these issues, right, is a simple yes or no on these issues. But the question is so complex that it is hard for some people to even understand what is even being written on these ballots. You see what I'm saying? So it's our responsibility to make sure that at a young age, and even to the new voters, the older voters, whatever the case may be, is that we're putting information out there that's breaking down what is on these ballots, not just on the local level, but on the state and federal level. Because these small issues, these amendment changes, et cetera, plays a tremendous role in everyday life, period. For the minimum wage worker, for the middle class, whatever the case may be, these amendment changes, these other rules that we're voting for, I know like it was a big thing in Arkansas about a casino at a point. It was just so many things that we were voting for. And it was so bizarre that a lot of people that were first-time voters didn't even understand what was they voting for besides the governor's race. Like besides the governor's race, no one understood what else they was voting for. So that's where you have leaders in the community, Phi Beta Sigma, you got the NAACP, you got these other community organizations that are a part of the community that can help educate and put out information about what's going on. And that is our responsibility as leaders, to make sure that we're doing voter education. We're educating people on what's on these ballots. We're educating not just the youth, but everyone that's voting about who you're voting for and what you're voting for and why you want to vote for it, why you're going to say yes or why you're not going to say no. Our job is not to tell you what to do. Our job is to explain what's going on so you can make the best decision based off your values and principles. That is our responsibility as leaders. And my responsibility as the next leaders for the next generation, after y'all are done, to step up to make sure that we can make these things more accessible, to make sure things are being able to be interpreted better for all kinds of walks of life, for people that have a degree, those that don't, those that have a PhD. We need to make sure that these ballots are accessible and able to be used in a proper way so that everybody can use it. Because, it goes back to the suppression. It's another way that you make sure that the vote doesn't go the way it should. It's simple.
Brother Rowe, I want to bring your voice in. Let's talk about why it's important for us to be prepared, right? To read the ballots before going to casting our vote. I remember many times an educated woman with multiple degrees who's gone to the ballot, right? Focused on the candidates, right? I was focused on the candidates because that's what was on the news, right? And when I get there in the ballot, there are questions about something that's happened locally that I'm so unaware of. I'm reading the question 3-4 times, have no clue, rather to say yes or no. Come on and help us understand why it's so important for us to prepare ourselves before going to cast our vote.
So that's what we talked about before, is going beyond voter registration and voter education, right? Because what you want to do before you even walk into that polling place, you want to know everything that's going to be on your ballot. And everything that's on your ballot isn't necessarily going to be what your neighbor down the street or whoever you went to high school with or in another state, because there's local issues that are specific to your district, and different issues like property taxes, which is a big thing right here in Nashville. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure that you get the information. And if you're confused about what's on the ballot, Google it. And make sure that the search that you're looking at is something that's fair and nonpartisan, because you don't want to start looking at information and go down a rabbit hole of misinformation. Because in this area of technology, this age of technology, people are susceptible to getting the wrong information. So you can go on Facebook now, and depending on what you like and what you look at, you have different algorithms that's persuading you to go one way or another. Step outside of that, go to nonpartisan side. I know earlier I spoke about Equity Alliance, and they're a nonpartisan group here in Nashville, and they do an outstanding job doing a voter's guide that lays out everything that's going to be on all the different districts here in Metro Nashville to give you an opportunity to sit down and read it from Republican and Democrat standpoint. So just Google it, do your own research, go to a nonpartisan site. So it's not forcing you one way or another, that you're able to look at the information and make a decision for yourself. Just because something is right for somebody down the street doesn't mean it's right for you. So look at what's going on in your district and go and vote. And I challenge us Black men to reach out to other Black men and not only ask them, did you vote, but ask them, when are you going to vote? So have a more active conversation where you're asking them, when are you going to vote? When did you vote? So that way it's a better conversation, as opposed to, letting it just sit there. Are you going to vote, man? I don't know, man. Ain't nobody running. Ain't nobody looking like me running. So I'm just going to chill in the barbershop. So nah, don't do that. Don't do that. It's not good for you. It's not good for your sons, your nephews, and everybody else that goes in there. Find out what the issues are. Go out there and make your voice be heard. That's the only way you make change.
Brother Ashford, I'm gonna bring your voice in here, and then we'll move into direct actions. But Brother Ashford, I want you to address the brother who's going to go to the polls this year, and he's going to have a question that he just don't understand and get frustrated and leave it blank. Come on and talk the danger of leaving things blank at the ballot because they can't understand, and come on and help us again re-emphasize the importance to educate yourselves before you go cast your vote. Brother Ashford.
Absolutely. And I can give a practical process to that. So my wife right now, she had her car die. So we're in the process of purchasing a new car for her. right? But we're not just going to go into the dealership blind. We've been online looking around, educating ourselves on what's out there, the cost of everything, what that looks like.
That's right.
Should be the same type of emphasis when we vote. The importance of just educating and being prepared in life. This is something I tell our young mentors and young mentees that I work with. We have to be prepared in life to get what we want. We can't just show up on game day and drop 50. We got to be shooting in the gym 100 nights before in preparation to be able to show up like LeBron or Kobe to drop 50. It takes preparation, but also the importance of us knowing our rights when we get into the booth as well. If you are confused, you have the right to ask a poll worker, hey, can you explain this to me that's on this ballot, right? That is vitally important. We have laws and rules that we can adapt to once we get into the polls. But again, that goes back into us as Black men reaching out to each other, explaining the voting process. Not just, hey, we need to go out and vote because of the reasons we've laid out, but we need to know the logistics about the laws and the availability to gather information while we're in the polls, just as much as outside of the polls as well. I really believe and stress preparation. Sometimes I might even overthink some things sometimes because I want to go in to be fully prepared, not if something may go wrong, but just in case when something goes wrong, I want to be well prepared for everything that's going to face and come my way. And that is just the way that I operate. So again, I challenge us as a community, as Black men, to be just as prepared as when we're getting ready to go to the Titans game, as when we're getting ready to go to TSU homecoming, when we're getting ready to go out anywhere, to prepare ourselves to enact and invoke the power of our vote.
Very important. Thank you all so much for that. I think, and even our viewers who are responding, really appreciating. And I appreciate, Ashford, you reminding us that we have the right to ask, right, questions. We have the right to ask for support while we're there at the polls. That's what poll workers are there for. Someone said Google, with technology, with our phones, right? The time of information, we're really literally, right, have access to information. So there's absolutely no reason why we should leave anything blank because we don't understand it. There are many ways to understand the ballot, and it's easy as preparing. It's easy as preparation. Preparation is the key to life, they say, right? Preparation is the key to making sure that you cast the right vote. Ashford, I'm gonna turn it back over to you as you all begin to talk about direct actions that you're offering our community this afternoon as it relates to voting, particularly for Black men. I turn it back over to you, Ashford.
Thank you. And I hope that we are able to get Pastor Dixon back on, but I'm gonna start with Brother Jackson as we begin to close down quickly within 90 seconds. What direct actions do we as Black men need to invoke as it comes to civic engagement, and what do we as Black men recommend other Black men in this civic engagement, the importance of voting space? What are our recommendations to our community?
Yeah, so to make sure that we make this a consistent conversation in all circles at all times, the more and more we're hearing more about the civic engagement that we have a responsibility and an obligation to for our community as Black men, and we talk about these conversations more and more, you will see a drastic change in our circles. And that is our responsibility, and that's our obligation to not just as Black men, but as Americans, as people, for the next generation. Because what happens is the more and more you keep hearing these conversations and you make this part of your day-to-day lifestyle, it becomes who you are. And once it becomes who you are, then you're going to start seeing conversations different. You're going to see different elections change. Everything is going to completely change if you make this part of your lifestyle. And this is what we need to make sure we make this a consistent thing, not just as for men right now, the people watching, et cetera, not just for us, but for the next generation. Because like I can't remember who said, I think it was Brother Janabu, who was saying that I'm going to plant this tree, and I might not be the one that's going to be able to sit under and have that shade, but I know my kids will. And that's the thing that we need to always remember is I might not have it the best right now, but I know my kids will if I put the work in now. they would benefit from what we always consistently talk about and the work we put in. So just making sure we're having these conversations, not just with the generation now, but with the next generation as well.
Brother Williams, I'm swinging to you. What are some direct action recommendations that you have for Black men in this space of civic engagement?
So one, I think, is to make yourself aware. What's going to be on the ballot. The issues. I know one of the things, the questions was, do we want the state? I live in New Jersey, so one of the questions, do you think we should legalize marijuana? That might not have been on the ballot for Dr. Rowe in Nashville. So again, educating yourself as far as what's going to be on the ballot. I definitely encourage people, brothers, to direct action, to vote, to once you're registered to vote, and to get that ballot early, and to go and cast your ballot, as you're driving to work, and with no stress, with the least amount of resistance or stress that we can. And again, just doing it early, and really just again understanding that it's our obligation, it's our moral obligation as African American men and women. We look to those giants who all came before us, but we also owe it to the countless men and women who died at the hand of law enforcement. So when I think about Sandra Bland, Tamir Rice, Freddie Gray, Michael Brown, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, I can go on and on about those men and women who unfortunately who can't cast their vote because of a system that was built really to have us disenfranchised and to be oppressed and to be held back. I think we owe it to them as well, to make sure we do our part to go out and cast our vote.
Brother Rowe, your direct action recommendations.
Black man, go vote. That's it. Just go vote. This is not voting season. This is a year-round thing. Everything that's going on, all these people that are on the ballot have been preparing themselves to serve, right? It's your responsibility, even beyond this, to hold them accountable, to ask them questions, to make sure that what they're actually saying is what they're planning on doing. Go vote. Talk to these people. Find out what they're about. And if they're not about anything, you run. Find out what all it takes. It's a simple process. Go to the election board and figure out how to run. It all starts on the local level. All these people, even Barack, he started on the local level.
Right.
So all these people that are running for representative, for Senate, local Senate, state Senate, there, them, especially in Nashville. Pretty much everybody that's running, but know that these people are going to run for the next level. And if you're not holding them accountable, if you're not preparing people, then that's the people that you're going to have on the national level. So hold people accountable and go vote, black man. Just go vote.
I think his video may be down, but do we have Pastor Dixon able to give recommendations?
Yes. Thank you. I got booted off again. Let me say that one of the things, and even my participation on this call, is one of the things we've got to do is we got to learn how to support one another. We have certain people who are connected to candidates and issues, and yet when they call us, we don't respond. I think it's important for us, in particular as men of Sigma, that we have to support one another, encourage one another, participate and show up, and then trust one another, as because all of us can't do all of the background. All of us can't do to gather all of the information. But I'm here on this call because I believe in Ashford, and he's my brother, and And I think that when we demonstrate that we're willing to be supportive of one another, then the agendas that we're supporting and the agendas that we're behind will be pushed to the forefront, because they said, we're not just taking on one person, because it's easy to silence one person. It would have been easy to silence John Lewis had not John Lewis been working with some other people. He was in good trouble because he brought other people to the table, and I think that's what we have got to do. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Can I add one more thing about
Go ahead,
support?
Brother Rowe.
So in supporting some of these candidates as well, some of them will need financial support to run their campaign.
Yes.
So a lot of commercials that you see, and a lot of times when they're reaching out to you, as our brother Dixon was talking about, you can donate even after you vote for them. You can donate to their campaign to make sure that you're financially supporting their cause, because it's expensive to run a campaign. So you may not think $2 or $3 might be handy, but go ahead and donate to their campaign as well.
Amen.
Man, I want to, before I turn it back over to Reverend Jean Marie, wanted to thank each one of you for being on here for this important conversation. And I know we still have more to do. It could have been the tip of the iceberg, but I want to close out on some words of my own before I turn it over. And these are, as we circle back to Congressman Lewis, these are Congressman Lewis's words. Freedom is not a state. It is an act. It is not some enchanted garden perched high on a distant plateau where you can finally sit down and rest. Freedom is the continuous action we all must take. In each generation, we must do its part to create an even more fair, more just society. Dr. King, in his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community, talked about there are 4 institutions primed to lead Black people to liberation, because that is what's at stake right here, our liberation. The Black church, Black media, Black fraternities and sororities, and Black professional organizations. Black men, we stand before you here right now as a fraternal organization reaching out to you, needing your support, reaching out to you saying you are valuable. Your voices are valuable. Your vote is powerful and valuable, and we need you. We're going to be doing our part to connect with you on many levels, because we cannot change the predicaments within our community. We cannot alleviate the oppression, the inequities that we face on a day-to-day basis unless we work together, as Pastor Dixon said, unless we organize within our communities together to enact the type of change that we want. President Obama told us we have to stop waiting around. We are the change that we want to be. And we're going to continue to reach out to you, Black men, because with our votes, with our collective impact and our collective power, we can finally create the change that we want. We can finally change the hearts and minds of those that live in the same communities as we do. We ask you today to prepare yourself now to vote. November the 3rd is a vitally important election. We need you to come out to vote. We need you to vote early. We need you to get your family members to vote early. The men of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated will and are leading this process right now. Beyond this election, we will be engaged civically in our communities. We will be standing with the Black women in our community, the Hispanic men in our community, leading for social, political, and economic change. Won't you join us? Won't you join us in this fight for liberation? Dr. John Marie, we turn it over to you, and thank you on behalf of our honorable president, Michael Crystal, for allowing the men of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated to be with you all here this afternoon.
Awesome. Thank you so much. The work that we do at Scarritt Bennett Center, our work primarily is about changing minds and changing hearts. And so one of the comments today in the post, a brother said, I'm going to vote early, and before I go vote, I'm going to educate myself. And so I want to say, on behalf of the Racial Justice Ministries at Scarritt Bennett Center, thank you. Thank you to the Phi Beta Sigma fraternity for joining us in this conversation as co-conspirators to call out Black men, to call them back in. That's the work of justice. The work of justice, the nature of the work of justice is calling people out to call them back in. So thank you, each of you, for leading the way to have this very important conversation to Black men about Black men as it relates to civic engagement. Beloved, this year is a very important election year. It literally is life and death. It literally is life and death. And I know we say that every election, and we should, because every election, locally and nationally, is literally life and death, because the power of your vote is you get to say yay or nay about issues that impact our livelihood, our lived experiences, our everyday experiences. And so we're past the conversation around registering to vote. I hope you have registered to vote. This conversation today is primarily about educating yourself about what's on the ballot, locally and nationally, not just about the candidates, but about the issues that affect your everyday lived experiences, that affects your neighbors, your brothers and sisters, that will affect possibly people who don't look like you. It's about the impact of your vote. It's about you making it a family affair, that it's a generational, right? It's a generational, thing that we do from now on, where our children become voters because they watch their fathers be voters. Right? This is about our everyday lived experiences as human beings. And so on behalf of Scarritt Bennett Center, again, thank you for joining us. And I stand with the brothers of Phi Beta Sigma as co-conspirators to encourage you to go out and cast your vote. And when you do, remember the least of these. Thank you, and God bless you. Bye-bye.